Hi everyone and welcome back to LL Sports TV. Hope you're all doing well. Now, following on from my previous video, that was the LL TV Sports Awards where we discussed the different categories and all that. I thought I would do a follow-up video on the top 5 fights I want to see in 2025. So without any further ado, here goes. They're not in any particular order, but these are the top 5 fights I want to see in 2025. I must tell you that I had to whittle it down from 10. My production team, as usual, getting on to me about time. So, top 5, right, here we go. Number 1, Canelo versus Terence Bud Crawford at super middleweight. Now, Canelo, former pound-for-pound number 1. What can you say about him? Everybody knows he is. Former and current super middleweight champion. And then you got Bud Crawford, who's on my pound-for-pound listings at number 2. He's the current light middleweight champion. There is a big disparity in weight, obviously. Canelo being super middleweight, Terence Crawford being a light middleweight. But there's been a lot of talk about this fight happening. I know there's been some preliminary discussions, but the fight's not been made yet. I've got to say, at first, I wasn't feeling this fight. I just thought that the weight disparity would be too much. And I thought Canelo would be too big, too strong, and punch too hard. However, this fight now is starting to grow on me. The more and more I think about it, I do think that Bud Crawford has the necessary skills and a desire. And when you consider that Canelo, having been around for so long, he's had a long career, he's not what he was. And I do think that now that gap is narrowing to the point where I think it's a very competitive fight. And it's a fight that I do now want to see because I do think that Bud Crawford has a realistic chance of beating Canelo. So, yeah, that was my first fight. Second, Tank Davis versus Shakur Stevenson at lightweight. Now, this is a fight that people have been speculating about for a while. It's a grudge match. These two have been going back and forth for, it seems like, a few years now. There's been the usual sparring stories when they were younger, who got the better of whom. They don't seem to like each other. As borne out by some of the stuff that's been going down on social media. Tank, on his day, is a formidable fighter, really is. He's what I call a boxer-puncher, but he excels in both areas, you know what I mean? And his punching power is unbelievable. He really is good to watch also. Shakur Stevenson, master boxer, especially defensive boxer, probably the best defensive boxer on the planet right now. So if there is a guy that could beat Tank, realistically, especially at lightweight, then it would be, at the moment, Shakur Stevenson. That fight needs to happen. It's not happened yet. As usual, boxing politics, the two, for whatever reason, have not been able to get it over the line yet. But let's hope that in 2025 we can see that fight. That would definitely be one of the best fights of 2025, in my opinion. Right, moving on, heavyweight. Now, this may surprise some of you, especially if you base it on some of the stuff I've said about this particular fighter in recent months. But on reflection, I've been giving it a little thought. And yes, I'm going to say it, man. AJ versus Fury at heavyweight. That fight needs to happen in London. It's the ultimate local derby, if you like. Both from Britain, both from England. AJ's from Watford, stroke London. Tyson Fury from Manchester. Two best heavyweights in the country, but they're not really, are they? Because Daniel Dubois got to be in that shaker. But anyway, these two have been going back and forth for years at varying levels of intensity. It's nearly been done on a couple of occasions, but not quite. Some would argue that the luster is not quite the same, given that both of them are coming off losses. AJ, of course, got flattened by Daniel Dubois back in September. Fury beaten twice by Alexander Usyk in 2024. However, you chat to most men on the street. In fact, everybody that I've spoken to says they still want to see this fight. So why not? Let's see it, man. It'll be a massive event. Probably be the biggest event in Britain, certainly, in 2025. I can't think of a bigger fight in Britain. And whereas before I was advocating that AJ retire due to the way he got beaten by Daniel Dubois, comprehensively beaten as well. It wasn't just beaten, he was dusted off by Daniel Dubois. But even so, he said he wants to fight on. And if he wants to fight on, then hey, he's going to fight on. If he is going to fight on, the only fight for me that really makes sense is the Tyson Fury fight. So let's see it. Like I said, it'll be the ultimate local British derby. Everyone will want to watch it. It will stop the nation, so let's see it. Moving on, another domestic dust-up that I think needs to happen in 2025. Ben Whitaker versus Liam Cameron 2 at light heavyweight. Now, these two fought to a very controversial draw last year. Ben Whitaker was riding that wave, wasn't he? He was the next big thing, the big prospect that was looking so good in winning all his fights. Then he ran across Liam Cameron. Liam Cameron was expected to be a bit of a sacrificial lamb for Ben Whitaker, but in the end, the fight went totally different to the way a lot of people thought it would go. In fact, a lot of people thought that at the time of the stoppage, well, I would say stoppage, there was an injury. They both fell over the top rope. Some people saying that Ben Whitaker exacerbated the injury and pulled out because he knew that he was about to get a bit of a pasting. I'm not quite sure that that's what happened. In fact, I don't think that's what happened. But a lot of people, man, say that Liam Cameron was probably on his way to winning that fight and that Ben Whitaker took the easy way out. But having said that, what happened, and now people want to see that fight again. I was hearing that there was preliminary talks. I don't know how true that is. Ben Whitaker has been active on social media. So has Liam Cameron. Liam Cameron said he wants that fight. Ben Whitaker said it's going to happen in 2025. So the powers that be simply have to make this fight happen. We need to see what's going to happen in this fight. I think it'll be a really good fight, a really competitive fight. I won't give a prediction as to who I think is going to win, but what I would say is that that fight definitely needs to happen in 2025. Right, moving on, another domestic showdown, a fight that should have happened a few years back now. For whatever reason, it's not happened. Both parties blaming each other, which is often the case in boxing. But it's a domestic showdown that needs to happen, and that is at light heavyweight. Joshua Buatsi of Croydon versus Anthony Yarde of Hackney. So it's a South London versus East London showdown. Arguably the two best light heavyweights in the country. Some people from up north, Liverpool, might say Callum Smith should be in that shaker. But look, you know where I'm going with this. Two very, very good fighters. Two fighters as well that always seem to be in good fights. That issue as to who is the better needs to be settled in the ring. Should have seen it before now. We don't want to wait too long. If they wait any longer than 2025, then it's probably not going to be the same attraction that it would have been. So let's hope that they can get this fight made in 2025, and that will be an almighty fight, a pick'em fight. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not going to give a prediction now, but suffice to say, I think that would be an excellent fight, and it needs to happen. So those are my 5 fights that I think needs to happen in 2025. I know it's a bit UK-centric. I apologise for people outside the UK, and I'm sure there'll be lots of you that have different opinions on the best fights that could be made for 2025. I mean, I had to trim down this list. There were several other fights I could have mentioned. Some of the fights going through my head that I was close to including on my list include Virgil Ortiz versus Jerome Boots Ennis. That's a fight that's been spoken about for a while. I know that Virgil Ortiz has moved up to light middleweight. Jerome Ennis is still at welterweight, but he said at some stage he's going to move up. So let's hope if he does, they can get that fight going in 2025. Caleb Plant versus Edgar Berlanga. Now, this is a grudge match that's been brewing on social media now for some time. These two do not like each other. They've nearly come to blows when they've met personally. Been a lot of back and forth on social media, but it is a good fight, and it is a fight that you could see ebbs and flows and, you know what I mean, stuff like that. So I'd love to see that. Caleb Plant would start at a favourite, but Edgar Berlanga is a big puncher, young guy, talks a lot. Brash, you know what I mean? He's got that New York kind of swag about him. The press conferences in the lead up to this fight would be amazing. So let's see that. Keyshawn Davis versus Andy Cruz at lightweight. Keyshawn Davis about to fight for the WBO title. I think he's fighting Dennis Berinchik sometime in 2025. He's on a hot streak at the moment. Very well thought of. But then you've got Andy Cruz, who's a top amateur from Cuba. They faced each other in amateurs 4 times, and Andy Cruz won each time, including the gold medal match in 2020 in Tokyo. But there's been a lot of talk about them fighting as pros. Keyshawn Davis has said that, you know, the pro game is very different from the amateur game and he has the better professional game and that he would win a match between the two in the pros. Let's see it happen. Moses Itauma versus Filip Hrgović. Now, you would have heard me eulogizing about Moses Itauma previously on the previous show I did when I anointed him the prospect of the year. He's come out recently. He says he wants to take on Hrgović, which is a bit of a quantum leap from his previous opponents. But he appears to genuinely want that fight. We've not heard from Filip Hrgović. He was beaten quite soundly by Daniel Dubois in his last fight. But previous to that, he was seen as one of the top heavyweights in the world. So if they could get that on, that would be amazing. I would fancy Moses Itauma in that fight, but you never know. Hrgović has still got a lot left. He'll have something to say about that. And then finally, a fight that's probably unlikely to happen, but we've all been speaking about it in the boxing world for some time. Canelo versus David Benavidez, unlikely to happen because David Benavidez moved up to light heavyweight now. Canelo is on the record as saying that Benavidez doesn't bring enough to the table, which I found a bit surprising to say the least. But hey, that's it for me for the time being. I could go on. There are more fights I'd want to see, but we've only got a finite amount of time. And like I said, my producer is always in my ear about time. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about the list that I compiled. Let me also know what other fights I've missed here that you want to see in 2025. 2025 is going to be a great year for boxing, we hope. So let me know what fights you want to see in 2025. In the meantime, thanks for supporting and watching the channel. Really appreciate it. If you're new here, please like, share and subscribe. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.